Discover the heartbeat of Lexington at the Marriott City Center, your premier downtown destination. Let us handle all your meeting needs, whether you're planning a corporate gathering or a special celebration. Our elegant, versatile spaces provide the perfect setting for every moment. Don't forget about our great room bar, a perfect spot to stop in after work or before a game to enjoy handcrafted signature cocktails. You don't need to be a hotel guest. Just relax and unwind, whether you're gearing up for the game or winding down afterward. Lexington Marriott City Center, your ultimate destination to stay, connect, and celebrate.
The LetterWinner Podcast. I'm in the sports jockey booth again this week with our guy, former QB1 Morgan Newton. Morgan, the weather last week at Kroger Field, it was incredible. The reprieve from the heat allowed me to relax, sit in the stadium, put my feet up a little bit, even though I was kicking the guy in front of me in his back, and I had to get him a couple of drinks to smooth things over. There's a lot of storylines over the course of this past week. I always said college football, NFL football, it's the greatest reality TV show in the country. There's storylines all over the place. What stood out to you this past week?
Oh, man, there was a lot going on. I'm so thankful that football is back. I'm pumped up for the NFL. NFL this week is coming up. That's my favorite game to watch, although I love college football too. Man, Ohio State, Arch Manning, Bill Belichick, North Carolina.
I saw Bill get pulled out of the coach's box over to the missus during the game. Did you see that?
I did see that. And I never want to assume what's happening or what they're talking about, but it's pretty crazy to see this version of Bill Belichick rather than the version that we've seen for many years. It was no nonsense, all about business, no distractions.
Look, I'm going to play devil's advocate here. She's down on the field. She's dating a coach. I think she knows the game. I think that she saw something. She saw some sort of a tendency. She hit him up, pinged him. They met over, and she told him what she saw, Morgan.
Good for him. He's got another coach in the stands. I'm sure that's exactly what he wants. I'm sure exactly what Bill wants, another coach in the stands. Yep.
For me, I think one of the things that stood out, Morgan, is our guy, Coach Lee Corso. The send-off, sending our guy off, 90 years old. Coach Corso is a legend in his own right. College game day, in my opinion, became the original super spreader of collective nostalgia for college football fans, young athletes, and even college athletes, Morgan. What I know now with the game day crew and how they motivated us when they picked against us. And I look back on it now, and I'm like, if I was Rich Brooks, I would have put them guys on payroll. You're college kids, you're sitting around, we're watching. I've been watching college game day since circa 99, 2000. It's bittersweet watching Coach Corso, a legend, start to wind down and ride off into the sunset. And it just made me think about how I got into football. And I remember my parents telling me in 8th grade, Jeremy, we love you, but when you go to school, don't be on that bus when the school bell rings at the end of the day. Go find yourself, get in clubs, find the things that you like. Morgan, I popped in the band for a week. I was off. I was like, nah, this is not me. I stopped in on the Glee Club side for a little bit, and I rode the Glee Club out, but it still wasn't me. And then I remember looking up one day, a couple of my buddies show up, and they got the jerseys on. And I'm like, man, what's that? What are these jerseys? Like, yeah, we're on football team. We got a game tonight. And I remember going and connecting with the high school coach, and that ultimately was how I segued into getting into football. I look at the impact that a guy like Coach Corso played. He softened the game up for me. I didn't know anything about football growing up, but I saw this guy who was well-respected, crazy, super passionate for college football, and I just wanted to be a part of it, just wanted to be a part of that culture. And he softened it up for me, and that combination of football and some of the other after-school activities really fed my soul and just kept me balanced. Shout out to Lee Corso, man. Gonna miss that guy being in my living room every Saturday morning.
Yeah, no, it's a great story. And We all come to football or arrive at football different ways. I know growing up in Indianapolis area, it's not really a college town. Indianapolis isn't per se. So we watched a lot of professional sports, NFL, NBA, but game day certainly was an exposure that we got to the college game. And being able to see those fixtures on college football has always been awesome, much like you see them on basketball too, for college basketball when it comes to winter times. Obviously, Lee Corso has some Indiana connections from his coaching history, which is really neat. But I'm like you too. I certainly remember those 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock games. We'd be in the hotel or something at the Campbell House, and we get a chance to see who they selected, right? We try to find some motivation for those, or night games or whatever. We definitely wanted to know who they were picking to just add a little extra juice. Salute to Lee Corso on a great career, and they've got some great personalities to fill in the gap. So it's going to be a great show for years to come.
Let's switch over to the NFL side. I know you've seen some of those things over there too. How could you not see the Micah Parsons news? Big news there. Cowboy Nation seems to be torn about that situation. It looks a little weird. What are your thoughts on Micah Parsons' departure and off the Green Bay Packers?
Yeah, I didn't really see it coming, Jeremy. I think a lot of times you just expect the holdouts to happen in camp. They get some type of deal done, or you get tagged. So I didn't expect there to be a trade, especially a trade of this magnitude. And then you start to hear the stories and the narratives in the background, and it's just fascinating. Referring to meetings with players without agents present. There's been rumors of some injuries and things of that nature. I guess we'll get to see that play out, potentially having to get epidural shots in order to play in the game. So I can tell you Micah Parsons is going. He's that core that the Packers have in their front seven. You add him, they're going to be a force to be reckoned with in the NFC North. So I'm excited to watch him. And I think the Cowboys, they've got really good players. They paid Bland this week. Dak's already one of the highest paid players in the league. CD's one of the highest paid receivers in the league. Trayvon Diggs is one of the highest paid defensive backs in the league. So at some point, there was going to be some challenges from a salary cap point of view. So for them to get him out the door was probably good for them. I just want to see what happens. What do you think?
I think that's an elephant in the room, and I'd like to think that if I'm one of the Packers shareholders right now, that I'd feel some kind of way about the medical staff right now. He's a young player, and he's got to get healthy. And I don't know what course of action the Packers can take in a scenario like this. I think it maybe all depends on how much information they were privy to going into the trade, but I don't know how this doesn't end up in the courtroom unless Goodell steps in and says, hey, guys, we got to figure out how to smooth this over.
You and I both have had the opportunity in our past to go through an NFL physical. And there's not a lot of T's that go uncrossed or I's that go undotted. Again, it does make you wonder what happened. Because there's been times, we've seen it happen, where guys don't make it through the physical. So maybe it's not that big of a deal, but to me, my antennas are up on the situation.
Bruh, this is a lemon law. We see people getting fined and threatened with jail time over one car. And we're talking about a lemon that could essentially purchase the entire dealership. We'll keep our eyes peeled on this one, bruh. What a crazy situation. It reminds me, Morgan, of any relationship. The experts say that there's 7 stages of every relationship. You got your passion stage, discovery and realization stage, commitment stage, power struggles, growth and stability, enrichment, and probably the most important stage, your crisis and recovery stage. Because every relationship hits a crisis point, and only a small percentage of people are able to manage those crises and recover them. And it looks like with Dallas Cowboys and Micah Parsons, that there was no recovery there. He rides off into the sunset. He's a Green Bay Packer now. And we move forward and get ready for week 1. I thought the UK football team looked like they were in stage 1 this past week, the passion phase. We talked about the importance that we see guys playing with passion. I thought we saw that. I saw guys looking like they were competing to get their hands on Wilson and catch the footballs, rip the football out, bat the football, and tackle other people with the football. And hopefully the honeymoon phase isn't over, because we're going to find this weekend against Ole Miss, they're coming in with a potent offense, and we're going to realize and discover exactly how quickly the coordinators are able to rebound, eliminate some of the negative things that we saw on film, but also amplify the positives and be able to build on those things.
Yeah, this last week, to your point, beauty was certainly in the eye of the beholder. If you are a supporter of this stage of Mark Stoops, you could certainly find some beauty in last week's product. If you are a critic of Mark Stoops and his program at this point, you could poke holes through what you saw on the on-field product. I've talked to several people that did just that, asking questions, one an opinion, one a perspective, so on and so forth. And I know we'll dig into some of that today, but I think overall, and you can never be discouraged when you're 1-0. And I think there's a lot of reasons to be happy, proud. You're 1-0, especially in the current landscape of college football against a team that is picked to do really well in their league. Thankful to be 1-0 is better than being 0-1. But to your point, I think there's still some question marks.
Oh, for sure. And so you mentioned Mark. Let's talk HBC, head ball coach. So Mark talked in his press conference this week about the discipline, the toughness. He talked about the improvements that he saw on the offensive line, defensive line, said he liked what he saw up front with those groups. I agree. There was a lot of things to like in the trenches this past week. There's been talk about how well those guys graded out on the offensive line position, did not give up a lot of pressures, blocked extremely well, one offensive penalty. There's a lot to be proud of there. Mark was proud. He talked about their ability to change up the cadence, to change up the snap count. Those are real examples of an improved focus that was potentially lacking on some of these other teams. Morgan, you know it as well as I do. If you're not able to change up your cadences, if you're not able to change up your snap counts, that makes things extremely hard, especially when you got some of these defenders. Once they learn your cadence and your snap count, they're getting off on the line of scrimmage before your offensive lines even move.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're exactly right. The guys on that side of the ball, the 3-4 outside backers, the 4-3 ends, those guys oftentimes are some of the most athletic players on the field. And so if you let them get in a rhythm of jumping the snap, being able to more or less tee off on your tackles, get in gaps before a center snaps the ball and can get into a set, it gets really challenging and difficult. And so, yes, that's a great thing to be able to change up the count, snap count, to be able to do some different things, to really keep them honest on the defensive side of the ball. And some of it's the defensive line and outside linebacker. Some of it's the rotation of safeties, rotations of quarters to get in position and get set for whatever they're trying to do and accomplish defensively.
One of my biggest gripes that I've had, and I presented it obviously in a professional way, and I remember talking with Eddie when he was the OC. I remember talking with some of our other OCs, and I asked the question because for me, I remember Andre Woodson, who was an All-American here, and I remember their cadences, the hard counts, free plays that Andre Woodson would get. He was rewarded by using voice inflection and voice tones to draw defenders off sides. And it was a free play for him to go downfield to one of the many dynamic receiving options that we had. And now as you transition into some of these silent counts and these slap counts, and you reduce yourself to just going with a monotone cadence, or you're going on one every time, you take away the ability to give quarterbacks that opportunity for free plays. Do you think that's overblown, my point of view, or do you think that teams and coaches need to look at trying to get back and establish that as part of the game plan, drawing people off sides?
Yeah, I think the college game and really just the game altogether, starting at the high school level, has become more vanilla, less nuanced when it comes to voice inflection, hard counts, and having a count that's going to impact the game. This check with me stuff, the shotgun, it's a little more difficult to do some of that hard count play action stuff when you're in the shotgun. Yeah, you can do some pistol, but when you're in the shotgun, it's just a little bit more challenging, especially when you're on the road, when you're 5 yards, 6 yards away from the offensive line. And so I think that it's a combination of your proximity to the offensive line and being right there on the ball and under center. Plus, you couple that with a lot of the check with me game and the time that it takes to do the check with me, get the play, relay it in, and get that called and presented to the offense. So I think you'll still see some of those changes, some of that nuance in the snap count with senior quarterbacks and senior offenses and maybe some of the more pro style offenses. And that's what Dre and company ran back in those years they were under center more. If there's 31 points in the game, you get a free play and it's a 60-yard play, that makes a huge impact on the course of the game. If you do it twice, that's a big deal. I think if you can find the opportunity to weave that in, that's awesome. I just don't know that these present day coordinators value that as much as they value ensuring they get the best play that they think they're running out on the field.
Blows my mind. It blows my mind. I feel like Andre averaged an explosive every game off of a free play. And explosive being 20 plus yards. We can bring him on the show and we can talk about it. But that's what I recall. I think we got to get back to that somehow. We got a veteran offensive line. Can we put more on these guys? We got a 7th-year quarterback. Can we put more on these guys? In the situation that we're in the offense, there's a little bit of PTSD there with our fan base. You have to get a little creative with how you try to maximize these possessions. We're already tweaking the cadences, tweaking the snap counts. Man, let's go ahead and let's start working on it, Morgan.
Yeah. Yeah, you've got to use every bit of arsenal that you have in order to be able to positively impact the offensive side of the ball. And what I saw in the first week, we're going to need every edge offensively to be productive. The way that the team is constructed, the challenge it is to be efficient in the passing. Because you look at some of the statistics.
Don't be shy, Morgan.
Yeah, the Kentucky Wildcats passed for 85 yards, 10 of 23, 3.7 yards per pass, and 1 interception against a MAC defense.
A good secondary. Now, we went in saying that this MAC secondary potentially had 2 or 3 pros in it. Now, with that being said, we still only passed for 85 yards.
It was 85 yards, again, at home against a MAC defense. Remember, we said beauty's in the eye of the beholder. But when you're 10 for 23 for 85 yards and interception at home against a MAC defense, you've got to be thinking about how can we get creative and find more production in the pass game.
There's better edge rushers coming up ahead as well. And
corners, safeties, the windows tighten. It's not going to get easier.
Were you surprised that they did not give Cutter Boley an opportunity to take some snaps in the second half?
No. I'm not surprised because of the economics. I don't know if anybody knows exactly what it required to acquire a quarterback in the portal. That quarterback value is going to be significantly more than what probably Cutter's received as a freshman or a high school recruit. So I knew that they're going to give Calzada every opportunity in these initial phases, especially with the game being fairly close. I just didn't think that staff wanted the controversy. And they were winning the game, and we were still in control of the game.
And extended the lead at one point.
Yeah. It was a 2-possession game or more at parts in that second half.
So you mentioned the economic impact. You and I, we've had conversations before about the psychological aspect as well. If you make a change at that point, what message does it send to the team? And how would a quarterback like Zach Calzada, how would he internalize that decision of being benched without having the opportunity to complete an entire game after being named starter?
The team knows. We've been in those
Knows
locker
what?
rooms. The team knows who should be playing quarterback. We've been in those locker rooms. We know how camp goes. We know who's has the favor with the offensive line, defensive line, receivers. We know who has the spirit of the team. I don't think that there's a message sent so much to the team as there's a more of a message sent to those outside of the building that don't. I think we ran into one of these scenarios. You see it at a lot of programs. The best way to get on the field in college today is getting in the portal. That's proven to be the case with several teams that we watch in the league and outside of the league. Most of the time when a prominent quarterback changes locations, specifically in the Power Four, they're going to get a great opportunity to play because the numbers of what these quarterbacks are demanding are going up and up in that marketplace.
The guy that we're going to see Saturday in Austin Simmons, he begs to differ. He's a guy that's sat back and he's waited his turn. He's watched Jackson dart to the NFL, and now he stepped in this past week and lit it up. Ole Miss, 400 yards by air and 300 by land. And he seems like a guy who truly understands what Lane Kiffin wants to do. And despite throwing a couple interceptions early in that game, the brother rallied, dug in, and they ran Georgia State out of the stadium.
Yeah. That Austin Simmons is a heck of a talent. We saw him a little bit last year in some spots where they had maybe gotten ahead of some teams by a significant margin. We got a chance to see him. He's got a live arm and a very good athlete at the position. And he's being coached by one of the more respected offensive coaches in college football. So there's no doubt that they're going to come in here firing. Oh, and by the way, the Cats got them down there last year, 2017.
This is a revenge game.
And really changed the outlook of their season.
Spoiled it. Probably kept them out of the playoffs.
Quite possibly.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. This one circled.
Like,
yeah, they circled this one.
I hope we circled, bolded it, and outlined it and highlighted it as well.
Hey, and some of the no's, Mark wasn't backing off. Mark, we've seen some of the comments from some of his media appearances. Mark's going to be in the fight. That's one of the things we love about Coach Stoops. Mark's not going to back down from the fight. But Ole Miss is going to be inspired.
What are your thoughts on the offensive line and running back play this past weekend? Dante Dowdell, 130 yards, stripped off a big 79-yarder. Got to see his top speed, longest scoring run of his college career. And Seth McGowan, the New Mexico State transfer, with 78 yards as well on the ground. What are your thoughts on those two guys?
Yeah, this was a highlight of the performance last weekend, right? 220 yards on the ground, 43 carries, 5 yards a rush. That's a way you can control a football game, is being able to rush it at that clip and to rush for 220 yards when your opposition rushed for 59. We often talk about rushes and completions, and thankfully, based on the rushes, we were able to have control of the game and really make an impact. I thought the backs looked really good. I like how they approach the holes and they assert themselves in the run concept and the run schemes. And I think it's great for the offensive line to be able to be that productive on the ground and really create opportunities for those backs. So I thought they were excellent. That was certainly a highlight from the weekend.
I agree. I think at times McGowan, he hits the hole so hard, so fast. That seems to kind of be the Jay Boulware preferred style of running. Those guys not dancing around. But I think that there were some opportunities for us to see McGowan, maybe see the footwork a little bit, maybe slow it down, let some blocks set up, and then look to cut it back in. I would like to see those guys be more patient. That's the only knock I probably got there with McGowan. And there was a play, Dowdell, he runs extremely hard. There was a play down on the goal line where he gets hit by one of the linebackers for a no gain. And that linebacker did not wrap him up, but he still made the tackle. I don't want to see our running back bruiser being brought down on the goal line without being wrapped up. I'd like to see him somehow, some way, keep his balance and fall into the end zone. I thought the offensive line, I thought they played really aggressive. Morgan, our left tackle there, Big She-Eyes Pete, his footwork is what I thought it was. It is elite. That guy can really get out there in space. I just want to see him continue to build and work. We asked the question last week, will the offensive line be improved? As an experienced offensive line just like last year, will the outcome be different? Our responses were, we hope so. Through the first game, I know the offensive line is better now, and that's a huge sigh of relief because we talked about what we thought would be the difference with this group, the addition of another assistant offensive line coach and former All-American Bunchy Stallings. I feel like this group, if it just continues to get better, the wall could very possibly be back. Just got to keep these guys healthy.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. And then you can't understate maybe some of the shifts and changes in the tight end coaching space too, because that inline, what you do on the line, it includes everybody in the run game. It includes the offensive line, and of course includes wise, hand on the ground tight ends, off the ball tight ends. I agree with you completely. It was a great start to the year for the offensive line. Glad to see there's been some significant progress. Want to see how it translates going forward in some of these SEC games.
We talked last week about each of the positions on the field and what they mean. We talked about Willie Rodriguez. You thought that he would be a guy that they would look to get in certain matchups. He thrived, Morgan, when he was targeted last week. I saw a guy pulling away from linebackers, having to strain and absolutely extend and lay out to bring him down. What did you think about Willie? What did you think about Caddis? Both of those guys combined for 5 catches. Caddis, I think somebody lied to him, told him Sidney McLaughlin was at the game. He had a hurdle on the sideline, didn't know he had ups like that. I was very impressed with them getting the tight ends inserted into the pass game.
I thought the tight ends were also a highlight of what we saw at times in the offense and in the game. Willie, to me, looked like a dynamic player. He's still a young player, but he jumped off the screen to me with some of the things he was able to do in the passing game. And to your point, I think we saw some things that were a little bit different about Caddis. I think his reputation was maybe more involved in what he does in the blocking game, but I thought he showed well in that offense. And so to have 2 tight ends lead you in receptions, lead you in yards, that's a good thing to a certain extent. But we'd like to see the rest of the pass catchers come along the way.
What needs to happen? What did you see in the passing game? I saw a couple big pass interferences that could have been explosive plays that were called, guys getting behind the defenders. I think there were some opportunities there.
There was clearly a lack of rhythm, a lack of execution on the parts of the quarterback and receivers group this week. 85 yards was the net result of what we did from a pass perspective, but 74 of those yards came from tight ends. So you've got 11 yards, math is right, 11 yards that came from a receiver in a home game against a MAC defense. That's not good.
A good MAC defense.
Good MAC defense. But either way, that's not good. There's no way to sugarcoat that. That is not good. 5 catches. 2 receivers that caught balls. One was Harley Gilmore on what was pretty much an end around that a lot of these offenses have gamed up to create passing yards, and that was for negative yardage. So there is no doubt in my mind that Bush and company are going to have some long nights early in this week to try to get the pass game going with the wide receivers, because we know that you're not going to be able to win a game with 85 passing yards against an Ole Miss team that's very explosive.
Do you think that it was a scheme issue, or do you think it was just more of a rhythm and flow issue?
I think it's all of the above. And I genuinely believe this. I think you could go out there with no plays and be able to throw for more than 15 yards in a pass game, just drawing them up in the dirt. So I think it's a combination of scheme. The scheme was poor, clearly, based on the result. We think we still have questions about the personnel, right? Do you have the right personnel at the receiver positions to create separation, to run the concepts on time? I think you've got to also look at some of the situations, because we talked about it in prior years. Sometimes you get in these games and you never get in a rhythm. And so we talked about that a little bit with Leary in prior years. You never make it in a rhythm in the pass game. And so the quarterback's not in rhythm, the receivers are not in rhythm, and then therefore the play callers are not in rhythm in that particular area. When you talk about the wide receivers part of the offense, it was in all systems fail. Can't just point to one particular area. I think it was all of those areas that were problematic. But again, the tight ends part of it was beauty.
Wide receiver coach LaDamian Washington's undergrad degree was in psychology. Is it time for him to pull out that textbook and start having some different conversations with these guys?
Certainly. Look, those guys are on scholarship, and they probably have NIL. Those guys are to be counted on in this league to be productive. And yeah, it's time to break out that psychology degree and dig deep. And you're probably going to want to do that with the quarterback as well. Ole Miss is going to have an answer for the run game this week. We know in this league, they're going to keep adding and adding guys to the box to stop the run if they don't think you're a threat, if they think you're going to throw for 11 yards to a receiver in 4 quarters.
I'm going to see if you've been paying attention. I'd like to get your analysis. What stage of relationships do you think Bush Hamdan is in with the fan base right now?
You know, I think that's one of the fascinating things about the Kentucky fan base. The Kentucky fan base will support you probably even in times where you don't deserve to be supported. I've been on the other side of it. We've been on the other side. They will also criticize you at times where you probably don't deserve to be criticized. It goes both ways, short for fanatic. It is a great fan base, but I can tell you that when you're in Lexington in the fall, you've got about 2 to 4 weeks of time to figure out what you're doing. They give you to about time the Keeneland opens. Once Keeneland opens, you need to have it figured out. Because if you don't have it figured out by the time Keeneland opens, then they will redirect their attention to Big Blue Madness. That's just how this thing goes. So you don't have long at this program. If you can't figure it out quickly, your support it'll be gone. That's just how it goes. And Bush is a very nice guy. great family man, all of those different things. But you've got to be productive in the pass game. It's part of the formula for being successful at the University of Kentucky.
Morgan, we had a stretch where 3 out of 4 possessions went interception, safety, fumble there in the first half. When you have a sequence like that, what's the message like on the sidelines to try to prevent it from snowballing?
Yeah, Jeremy, that's tough. And you have to really lean on your leadership of your team to get back in sync. For the type of team that Kentucky showed in that first week, it looks like it's going to be predominantly a team that wants to control the game on the ground. You can't be successful when you turn the ball over. And that essentially was 3 turnovers that happened in that scenario, 2 of which the quarterback was a part of, specifically with that zone play that they ran backed up in the end zone. He's got to hand that ball off and get us out of harm's way. We always talk about the 3 keys. Get us to a scenario where we can get a punt off, right? That's critical when you're backed up. Get us to a scenario where you can get a first down and then beyond.
Let's switch over to Brad White. Let's talk about the performance of the defense this past weekend. The defense held the Toledo passing attack led by Tucker Gleason to 23 for 40, 270 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Where it seemed like he started to get a little bit of momentum late. When looking back at the film, I saw some veteran guys get beat out of position, but I also saw some plays where you got some backup reserve linebackers that are just trying to get experience, and they gave up some explosives that allowed Toledo to get down in the field position. Being a backup player, it's about earning the trust of your position coaches and of your coordinators. I thought these guys had more positive plays than negatives. However, all it takes is for one negative to create an explosive that leads to 14 fourth quarter points that pulls the game uncomfortably close. What are your thoughts overall about the defense this past weekend?
Yeah, I thought the defense was really good, specifically in the first half. They started to leak a little bit in the second half, and there's a lot of reasons that can be the case. One of the things that I heard Mark mention was you don't have a preseason schedule in college. So you're trying to create game reps and game-like conditioning in practice, but you're also not trying to beat up your own guys too. So the psychology of how to practice and prepare to play a full game can be really challenging at the college level. And I think Mark alluded to that when he made reference to exhibitions. What I saw, I think, was a combination of maybe a lack of discipline. Maybe they were trying out some different personnel, to your point, but also there's likely some full game conditioning there that might have created a scenario where they had some leakage.
So with the conditioning, are you recommending some more Stairmaster work over the course of this week? You know, what essentially helps these guys get ready for a high-octane Ole Miss offense that runs no huddle, some wide split alignments? What gets you ready for fast offense like this?
It's fast practice. There's nothing that prepares you better to play fast than practicing fast. And you got to run your individual periods with urgency and with speed and with intensity. You run your team periods with urgency, speed, and intensity. Your 7-on-7 periods, you should have one-on-ones this week. I expect there to be some one-on-ones this week between best receivers and corners to allow some opportunity for the iron to sharpen iron in practice. The practice has got to be high tempo, at least for a couple of days.
I had concerns going into this game. We talked about potentially a smaller linebacking core. The stance that you took is smaller could mean faster and quick. It certainly looked like it when you look at Alex Afari and the entire linebacking, as well as the secondary unit, holding this rushing attack led by UK transfer Chip Trainum, 59 total yards. What are your thoughts?
Run the ball, stop the run. It's the first key to being a successful team. It's the first key to controlling the game. Is how do you manage up front, offensive line, defensive line? That's a great start. You cannot be a productive team offensively, defensively, unless you are managing the game on the line of scrimmage. You know that better than anybody. That's a critical component to having a successful football team. Now, to your point around the speed of the defense, when you play zone read teams, zone scheme teams, speed helps quite a bit. But it helps you avoid some of those guards getting off double team blocks and getting on the backers. If you have faster backers that can come in and fill and create havoc and issues in the zone game. And that's something that is a staple of what Ole Miss does in Lane Kiffin is the zone scheme runs. So I'm excited to see how that speed holds up in a game like that.
Last week, we talked about what it looks like when players are in the process of potentially breaking. We talked about the need for coaches to identify guys that love to play the game of football. And I think guys like us, Morgan, we can look at the film the same way when me and my wife are sitting down and we're watching some kind of rom-com. My wife sees the sparks flying. She sees the storyline. And I'm sitting there and I'm caught by surprise every time. Did not see it coming, right? I'm always like, oh my gosh, my wife, she's looking, she's like, what? She knew it was going to happen 15 minutes ago. That's how I am with football. When I turn the tape on, I immediately know who's pretending to like the game, who's in love with the game, who's falling in love with the game, and who's madly in love with the game. And we got some guys right now through week one that got me believing that they're in love with the game. Brad White's edge guys. Kudos to the front office, those guys that are working there in the scouting department, because some of the things that I saw from number 1, Cam Oles, and number 2, Sam Green, and number 35, Steven Sackham Souls, them dudes are out there competing, starving for playing time. Head on fire, Sam Green, he had that first pressure. JQ Hardaway's able to step in, get that interception in the first drive. Boom, they start off the season, pressure, interception, right out the gate, first drive of the game. Then you come back and you look a little bit later. Green, once again, he's strong at the point of attack on a 4th and 1. He made the play, but he didn't make the tackle. He blew it up, knocked the tackle back 2-3 yards into the backfield. Running back had to run the hump, and the force is there to clean it up. It was so impressive. Number 14, Ty Bryant, love it. I thought at times their timing was perfect, getting down into those run gaps, into those C gaps. At sometimes, maybe it was too fast, knowing what Lane Kiffin has coming for us this coming week. Cam Oles working pass rush moves. That brother was making backside tackles. When you start talking about a guy hunting somebody down from behind, Souls, Cam Oles, you can't fake that. That shit's either in you or it ain't. You can't coach it. You can't push it. The guy's going to do it or he's not going to do it. And through week one, I feel like Brad White has got some guys that are truly predators. With that being said, Lane Kiffin coming to town, he's going to look to slow these guys down, but we'll get to that. What are your thoughts on the scheme against the Toledo Rockets in week one?
It was refreshing to see, to use some of your terminology, starving defensive players, eager to make plays, getting to the ball with some urgency. Every good defense does a pursuit drill because that's where opportunities come for tackle for loss, for big plays, gang tackling, even in some scenarios, causing turnovers. You see a guy like Jared Smith, a Kentucky product, looks like Tarzan. was a key contributor to what that defense was doing. It has a bright future, one of the young Wildcats. You mentioned Souls, you mentioned Olds, and then the guys getting involved in the run game and in the tackling game out of the secondary. So, yeah, it was promising to see a lot of names, a lot of guys be involved in the tackle category, and several tackles for loss, which is awesome. It means that they're reestablishing the line of scrimmage and pushing them back, getting some push. That's great to see. That's going to be huge when you're thinking about disrupting a Lane Kiffin offense.
I don't know the status of number 90, Humphrey Grace, going into this week. I saw him contain Tucker Gleason from the opposite 3 technique. I saw him cross over the line and cut him off on the opposite hash. That's just special. That special effort we talked about, that extra strain that he exerts. I saw it on tape. I know he can do it. And once I know that you can do it, that becomes the expectation.
That's right.
And that's one of the biggest compliments one of my ex-girlfriends paid me was, I remember when we were moving out of college, when we were packing her up and moving her out, and I was breaking things down, took the door off the hinges, was just doing a lot of handy fixing some things. And she looks at me, she's like, I didn't know you could do all of that. And what I knew is that she was paying rent. She had a maintenance guy. That was his job. And I knew that if I showed her what my real skill set was, then that expectation, Morgan, would be that I would be the handyman and the boyfriend. And I didn't want both of those hats. But with my football players, I know what these guys are capable. I've seen it on tape, and I'm demanding these guys bring that kind of fire and passion every single week. I got to mention Josiah Hayes. That brother is strong. I watched him shrug a grown man with one hand, rip off and make a tackle. He's just got a different type of strength. We talked about just how strong he is there in the trenches. Some of the young DBs, Morgan, that checked into the game, Cam Dooley, fresh off the boat. Soon as he got in, guess what? Tucker Gleason, they took a shot on him. He survived. Guess what? Lane Kiffin's going to do the exact same thing.
Yes, he is.
When those guys check into the game. How do I know? Because that's what they did last year. They tried Terion Nichols with the Trey Harris matchup. As soon as he checked into the game, they got to make sure these guys are awake, that them hammies, that they're activated. So that just shows me that with these substitutions, that these guys checked into the game. Chris Collins had them focused, knowing that when they got in, that they were going to be targets.
Yeah. Here's a good thing. When you go into a game like Ole Miss, you get into something. It's one of the great benefits of having Brad White as your coach. He's going to put you in position where you're going to have some support in the secondary, and you're going to be able to play fast and get involved in the run game as a secondary player with all the zone defense that he plays. It drives some people nuts how soft we play defensively. But the good news is when you play some of these high-flying, these high-volume pass attacks, it makes them complete passes at a high clip and get the ball down the field against some zone coverage and some multiple zone coverage. So this is going to be a great test. A guy like Lane Kiffin is going to run it enough to keep you honest, but he wants to win throwing it. And it's a huge test for these DBs, but it's also a huge test to see if we can get pressure on their quarterback with 4, maybe with 5 at times, but to try to do it with your defense alignment and some of your outside backers.
Ole Miss, 700 yards last week, 400 by air, 300 by land, 63 points with a slow start and 2 interceptions in the first quarter. When I look at the Lane Kiffin offense, I see a guy that's making play calls, Morgan, that understands the deepest desires of young football players, especially the ones playing linebacker and defensive back. These guys want to make TFLs. They want to get PBUs. They want to get big hits. They want to get interceptions. And the concept of just keeping things in front of you sometimes and reading your keys. It sounds very cliche, but this Lane Kiffin offense, it is predicated on eye candy, what our friends south of the border in the Latinx community call taco de ojo, eye tacos. They suck you in, and he loves levels. He loves wrinkles off of play action, and he loves his quarterbacks to be able to hit players in that intermediate 15 to 20 yard behind or over top of the linebackers. What do you see when you're looking at this Lane Kiffin offense? What is going to be the challenge for Brad White this weekend?
He's got this date circled, and he's happy, and I bet that program's happy that they get to play us early, to really think that they're going to set a tone for the year and the year that they're going to have. Ole Miss, historically, specifically with the Lane Kiffin coach team, is going to be very multiple in the approaches and what they give you offensively. They're going to show you 4 and 5 wide at times, empty at times. They're going to do a lot of things with shifts, motions to try to create advantages for their receivers. Because to your point, elite receivers want to go play in an offense that Lane Kiffin has. I think he knows, Mark and Brad, I think they know that you aren't going to be able to prepare for every concept that Lane Kiffin has over the course of the week. But the defense that you run puts you in a position where if you are disciplined with your rules and with your eyes, that you will be able to make plays and you'll be able to contain them and make it very difficult on them to be productive.
Ole Miss had 34 total first downs in week 1. We had 17 last week against Toledo. They were 8 for 13 on the money down, 6 for 7 with scores in the red zone, gave up 1 sack. Ole Miss was also actually outpossessed in this game by 2+ minutes.
Yeah, that's a great footnote. Some of the football people that raised us believe in time of possession, believe in controlling the football through time of possession. Some of these coaches don't have those same beliefs. Josh Heupel, it doesn't prioritize time of possession at Tennessee. It's a new age theory that many of these coaches have, is that they don't prioritize time of possession. If you score fast and you have explosives, you're just not going to possess the ball as long, making explosive plays and taking away explosive plays. Austin Simmons had 20 completions for 341 yards. Those are big chunk plays that they're producing in the offense against Georgia State. We're not talking about a lot of dink and dunks. And if they were dink and dunks, they were dink and dunks with a lot of yak that was aligned to them. I think they're going to believe that they can get those explosives at Kroger Field as well.
How did you avoid the eye candy in college? Not that eye candy. We're talking football, of course. We're talking about disguises on the back end, some of the influence that they put in place for young quarterbacks.
Sure. Focus. We knew when I played early on that one of the things defenses were going to try to do to us is they were going to try to put us in positions where we were behind the chains and where they could bring added zone pressures. And one of our answers to zone pressures is side adjustments, which inherently are shorter pass plays where we can get the ball in the hands of Locke, Cobb, McCaskill, and others quickly. But if we were in 3rd and 10, that didn't do us a lot of good. So we were expecting a lot of man-to-man and a lot of zone blitz on 3rd and long. It was a way that defensive coordinators would try to get off the field and force us into making some bad decisions, force into turnovers and sacks. One of the things that we often did and the way we were taught is corners, they can cheat with their alignment. Safeties, because of the ground that they've got to cover, they don't lie to you. They can't lie to you. Eventually, they got to get into their zones and in their formation. So we focused a lot on identifying the front and understanding who our threats were initially, but knowing where the safeties are because the safeties couldn't lie to you. with where they were in their depth.
What's your favorite romantic sports movie?
Well, that's a great question. I don't know how you beat Love and Basketball.
So
I know it's a basketball movie, but I don't really know how you beat Love and Basketball. I think about other football movies. Remember the Titans? It's not really romantic. So it doesn't really fit. Varsity Blues? I guess there's probably some romance in there somewhere. But I think about
the whipped cream bikini was romantic.
romantic. Yeah, sure, romantic to some. But I think more about the pig. What's the pig in Varsity Blues? And how he was going to give away his pig.
Billy Bob was going.
So
I can't remember the pig's name, bro.
I think his name was Bacon.
Bacon.
Yeah, Bacon. Well, Love and Basketball, to me, in sports movies, that's the one.
I'll tell you a good one that I like that's high on my list, probably just below Love and Basketball. Just Right with Queen Latifah and Common. And I think for me, I think that those movies highlight the kind of love that you have to come back from injuries and the support system around these athletes. But it just so happens to be girlfriends who become spouses in both of these movies, right? Hopefully I didn't ruin that for anybody. Football was very unkind to me. I played through high school banged up, had to have surgery after high school, right before starting college. And then a few months after that, had an ACL injury. So I went on the table. I had 2 surgeries in my first 6 months away from home. And I'll tell you, having surgeries for the love of the game, that takes a type of toughness that I had no idea needed to exist in order to push through that. And obviously having strong support system around me with athletic trainers and other guys that happen to be in the training room. I think the only person that's probably got me beat in surgery so early on in a relationship is Lauren Sanchez Bezos. A few surgeries early on in that relationship just to show how amazing Jeff is.
Yeah, the point's well taken. I had times when I was at UK for the first time in my athletic career where there was some doubt about your ability to execute, your ability to play the game. When I was a junior, I had shoulder surgery, and there were very few quarterbacks that came back from the labrum surgery and the labrum tear. And you really have questions about if you're a quarterback and you don't have your shoulder, and you start questioning some things. But I think that love of the game, it finds its way back. It finds its way back, and we always choose ways to get around the game now, any way we possibly can. I coach high school football. Nothing greater, no purer form of football than high school football, and being able to see those kids reach their goals, and a lot of them to go and play college.
Did Alabama look broken to you this past weekend?
Yes. Cam Newton talked about Alabama this week. And I think he summed it up perfectly. Sometimes you bring people into a culture and they may have watched it from afar, but until you are in that culture and you live, cry, bleed, sweat, and are a part of that culture, sit down and eat, break bread with those people, understand what the rituals are on Saturdays, Friday through Sunday for a lot of those folks. I think it's looking like he's going to have a tough time. They looked broken to me. What do you think?
They looked broken to me last year when they got bodied by B and ended up on that Vanderbilt mixtape. I watched guys that looked like they had no discipline, gap integrity, unable to figure out where to insert themselves into the run scheme. They got routed by Vanderbilt. Routed. There's no sugarcoating it. Vandy lined up and punched them right in the mouth time and time again. And when the fourth quarter came in, everybody else, I was thinking, here's where Alabama's going to get it right back on track. And Vandy leaned in and ran them off the field. So to me, they looked broken last year. And this year, they look more broken than what they were at the end of last year. And I don't know where Alabama goes from here, but what I do know is Kalen DeBoer is a fine football coach. And that climate that he's in down there, it's just different. I think when you have elite caliber players, you got to have strong men. I'm not saying that those guys that Alabama got on the sideline, that they're not strong, but you got to have guys who can communicate, who can translate, who can motivate, who can inspire, and have the ability to have tough, critical conversations, have open, honest dialogue, and to be able to get their message across to these guys in a way that they understand it. The problems that are happening there, they have to be fixed quickly. And I'm not sure that there's the right mix of staff there to correct the issues that I'm seeing. I'm seeing a lot of personalities when I'm watching that football team. And when you're running a team, there's an element there that we've talked about with training camp, very similar to basic training, where you try to knock and eliminate as many egos as you can and rebuild these guys back up as a unit. I'm watching guys come in possibly with emotional support dolls into the stadium. I don't know if it's a little penny doll. I don't know if it's a stress relief doll. There's just a lot of things that start to get magnified and pointed out when things aren't going quite right. And the outside noise becomes so loud and so distracting that if the board doesn't figure out how to put a cap on this thing, it's going to collapse for them this year.
You can't compete for a national championship when you lose to Florida State the way that they did early in the year, or you lose to Vanderbilt the way that they did. Look, Alabama, you're supposed to win games. And not only are you supposed to win games, but the tide is supposed to roll. That's what Alabama is about.
I got my emotional support by putting my hands on people in practice and on game days. That's how I work through some of those frustrations and some of those scenarios where I just needed to get some release. It wasn't grabbing my Cabbage Patch Kid and bringing him into Commonwealth Stadium. That wasn't it. I don't think anybody wanted to see that at the catwalk.
Nope. I just don't know if it's a good fit. And maybe it will be a good fit. Maybe he deserves time to get it figured out. His buyout's going to give him time to get it figured out.
Do you think he'll get a chance at another prominent program to show that, or do you think he'll have to take a step back?
He'll have to take a step back, but he'll get another shot and he'll learn. There's been guys that get a shot and then they don't and they come back. Look at the guy we played this week, Lane Kiffin. He got a shot and he's back in the league or whatever. Now he was raised in the South a little bit more and understands the culture of the SEC a little bit better. And I think that's a little bit of the concern with DeBoer is, do you understand what you're getting yourself into here and what it takes? It goes back to the old adage. I'm sure you've seen those clips about what Denzel Washington talks about American Gangster, or Scorsese when he talks about Goodfellas. Culture matters. It matters. You've got to get culture right, especially when you're trying to perform at the level that Alabama is fantastic to perform. It's critical. Doesn't seem like they got culture.
The Ole Miss rushing attack, Morgan, looked like a three-headed monster. Lacey, Diggs, and Alexander, those guys combined for about 250 yards on the ground. They do such a good job of making the run look like the play action. Talk about your thoughts on the Ole Miss rushing attack. How do you defend this Lane Kiffin offense?
I think the commitment to the rush can be a little misleading in non-conference games like this. They clearly get to a point in the game where the margin's so wide that you put more emphasis on running the ball than you would in a normal scenario. But it was a very impressive opening week for them. Lacey, 108 yards rushing, 6 yards a pop. Diggs, 91 yards rushing, 13 yards a pop. Those are explosive runs, and you have to prepare for those backs coming out of the backfield.
I was watching the film today on lunch break, and I got sick to my stomach, and I regretted actually turning the tape on when I saw some of the plays of them slipping the backs out of the backfield, getting the guys out into the flats, the arrow routes, crossers, and they get very creative with how they get those backs into space, working it off the play action. How do you defend those things?
Discipline. They're going to have elite personnel, running backs. They recruit great running backs. They recruit great receivers. They're going to have big, pretty offensive linemen. We saw that on tape last year when we watched humongous, space-eating offensive linemen. But it's going to come from discipline. It's going to come from tackling. You got to be great tacklers this week because they're going to make their plays. But you got to stop the 3-yard play from turning into 30-yard play. It's going to be critical. The corners are going to have to play and be a great part of contain in the run game. But then they're also going to have to do some things to disrupt some of the route concepts in the pass game. It's a very tall task. I can understand why you were uneasy when you watch the tape.
One of the things that I hang on to is that these inside linebackers this year, they're built for speed. And I can think back on some of the early Brad White defenses where some of our inside linebackers were bigger, not as flexible and agile as Rayner and as Afari. Afari came in big, out in space, 13 tackles, 2 tackles for a loss. Rayner chimed in with 6 tackles as well. I think that these guys move extremely well. But if your eyes aren't in the right place, it doesn't matter how well you move. But if they can be disciplined, I think that they have a chance to keep these backs in check, especially in that passing game.
Rhythm's a key component to Lane Kiffin offense being successful. Being able to manage, disrupt their rhythm, specifically early in the game, is going to be critical. Keep in mind, Kentucky played Ole Miss at Ole Miss last year, only gave up 17 points, and they started well and played them well down there. They were very effective in disrupting what Lane Kiffin and Jackson Dart were trying to do early in the game. Got to impact the way they protect the quarterback and they protect the pass concept. You've got to bottle up the run game to try to make them one-dimensional. And then you've got to be able to be great tacklers in space and not allow them to turn good plays into game-changing plays.
Do you think that we will know early on if the game plan is effective? I remember how they disrupted Jackson Dart and had him playing very tentative. We knew in the first quarter that he had been affected by the Brad White defensive scheme. Last weekend, the mistakes that Austin Simmons made, he made against Georgia State. This week, if he makes those same first quarter mistakes, it's against an SEC opponent. I'd like to think that if he throws 2 picks in the first quarter against our defense, that's the right recipe for us to have them on their heels and on upset alert again.
You know what's interesting? We talked a little bit about time of possession, right? And obviously, when they played Georgia State, time of possession was not really a statistic that was indicative of who won the game, who controlled the game. I was looking back into some of the information from last year. Kentucky last year won time of possession 39 minutes to 20 minutes. Possessed the ball twice as long as Ole Miss did. So you talk about how you contain a high-octane offense. Have them over on the sideline with Gatorade cups in their hands. It's a great way to contain them.
To play devil's advocate to that, 2 seasons before that, they possessed the ball 2-1 to the Tennessee Volunteers. And they lost by 2 scores.
Yeah.
So it goes back to maybe our initial sentiments early. It's really important. I guess if you win the game,
Yeah.
it's important.
I thought last year it was very important because when you look at the statistics, when you couple the time of possession with 60 yards in the rush game last year, we held them to 60 yards. I think I saw they had 13 rushes last year, and Dart had 18 completions. That part of the game, we really dominated them in, and we were able to bottle up them in the run game. And so I think that's a formula that we saw in week 1 against Toledo. This team has an ability to run the ball and possess the ball and keep their offense off the field. And if you can eliminate explosives, it's a great recipe for success in a game like this. And I'm sure Mark is probably preaching that to his staff and his troops.
How cool was it to see the NFL cats back at Kroger Field this past week? Ray Davis, Big Deion Walker, and also Josh Hines Allen. What do those guys mean to you?
Yeah, they're great representatives of the program. Always excited to see former Kentucky players that are successful in the NFL come back and be around the current players. And maybe it's not Michael Irvin, Ray Lewis, Edgerrin James. To Kentucky fans and Kentucky supporters, it's every bit as important to see those guys come back and be a part of it. And I think Stoops' teams has had a great track record of players, active players in the NFL, coming back and being around the program, specifically on game days. So it was really cool to see.
I got on X after the game Saturday, and I went on to Josh Hines Allen, his X page, and he had a comment that said, TikTok has ruined college football. What do you think he means by that?
I don't know. What's your interpretation?
If I had to take a guess, he probably has observed some of these guys looking silly in the locker rooms with their phones out, maybe holding hands, jumping up, doing some funny poses in the air. And he's over it. Thinks it's a clown show. He thinks that there's probably some pretenders in some of these locker rooms, not ours, just in general. Guys that are better actors than they are football players. Got a lot of Denzel, got a lot of Brad Pitt in them, and ain't got no dog showing up on that X-ray of the chest.
It was on our team with your point of reference of the picture, the infamous picture, preseason picture. Not sure who put those two guys up to that.
I think somebody took a bathroom break. Known these people for over 20 years of my life. And at no point have they ever endorsed or tolerated or considered or scripted and asked a couple guys to go over and do something like that. It could not have been their idea.
I know a lot of those same people. I agree. I don't know what happened there. It was a snafu. They snuck the film amongst the rest of the film. Maybe it was TikTok. I don't know. I don't have any idea what. And I thought it was Photoshop initially. I thought it was an AI deepfake. Yeah, initially. So I don't know what that was. But back to your initial point on the TikTok, yeah, he's probably right. I think we're in a time where some of the social media perception stuff yields some microwave results, opinions, followers, because your ability to get information out there might impact the money you can make, things of that nature. And he's probably referring to that. Remember, you're talking about a guy that he came to campus as one type of specimen and he left as another. So this is a guy that worked Like he put in the work and the time, and he was committed. And so he probably has an adverse reaction to those that don't work.
He came in looking like a Looney Tune and left looking like a Monstar.
Correct.
And speaking of Monstar, he's not as big as Josh Allen was, but I saw enough from Steven Souls last year as a freshman to know that he has to be a central figure on this Kentucky defense. And his 2 sacks that were strip fumbles were very impressive. However, he still had technical mistakes in his get-offs that they gotta clean up, because that margin of error of being able to get to a quarterback in this league and potentially on the next level, it requires perfect footwork. And he has to get some of those things fixed. He's a cheat code. Stoops made a comment about him being a little undersized. To me, it's a slight dig. And I don't mean that like in a negative way. As a competitor, when I heard my coaches say little things like that, it made me dig in more. I didn't take it as a true slight. It was just an honest opinion, honest feedback. I think that Steven Souls has the ability to lead the SEC in sacks. I think he's that kind of a talent. I think that he's super athletic, flexible, agile. And Brad White and that group over there, they have to continue to work with him, clean up some of his pass rush, his footwork, because that guy has a high motor. He plays with high tenacity. When we talk about identity, he identifies as a football player. He's got selfies up, face shots on his page, and it's tagged as the face that this next quarterback's going to see. His hashtag #Sack'emSouls. His support network around him, his dad, his younger brothers and siblings, they're all football people. Don't talk to Souls about anything that's not football related. I watched him from a distance at practice. This is 10 days into camp, and he's locked in. He's hyper-focused. I love this guy. I asked him what his type was, and he said brown and leather. And we call him Wilson. Spherical.
Yeah.
That's the only curves he's trying to put his hands on. That brother loves football. He's committed to it. He's in a monogamous relationship, game of football. And I love him.
Yeah, we've had great success getting players from the Knoxville area at Kentucky. And sometimes the undersized guys, they slip through the cracks when you're a little undersized, because so much of what creates a 4-star or a 5-star are the metrics. Are you this tall? Are your arms this long? Hands this big? Do you run this speed? Those types of things. So when I hear them talk about a guy like Souls being quote unquote undersized, that doesn't give us an indication on whether or not he plays football good. Because at the end of the day, that's what we're doing. We've got high expectations for him as well. We've had great success, track record of pulling guys from Tennessee over the years. And I think he just he's going to add to that list of Tennessee natives that are high impact players for Kentucky.
The most undersized Eastern Tennessee, Kentucky alum that made a major impact on our program that I can think of is 18. Didn't jump high, didn't squat a lot, didn't have the biggest hands, longest arms. The brother could do something with Wilson, though.
He could play. Could flat play. That's what it's about. That's the game. 18 played a long time. And it got to a point where they didn't particularly care about him being quote unquote undersized. I think that's part of the formula for Kentucky. How Kentucky can differentiate itself from a lot of the programs that they compete against that are going after measurables. Yeah, some guys that have high motors and are very productive players, although they may not have some of the baseline measurables that you look for in a 5-star.
Morgan, entering last week's game, my key player for the Toledo offense was Junior Vander Ross III. He finished that game with 7 catches, 88 yards, and a touchdown. He was their best offensive player. This past Saturday, he had a level of success that I shouldn't say expected them to have, but I knew watching tape and seeing what he was capable of, I knew that there's an element to his game that was to be respected. He went out and he earned some respect this past weekend. Now enters the Ole Miss. When you look at some of the success that they had last week in the receiving core, Wallace the third, another third. Wallace the third led them with 5 catches, 130 yards and a touchdown. Daquan Wright, 78 yards on 4 catches and a touchdown. And Caleb Odom led them with 57 yards on 4 catches and a touchdown. And later, Isaiah Hartrop with a touchdown, a 13-yard touchdown play. It looks like they do an excellent job of facilitating the football around the field to not only the wide receivers. We talked about the running backs. What does this Kentucky defense have to do in order to take some of these pieces off the board for Ole Miss and make them one-dimensional?
Yeah, their job starts this week in practice with getting themselves ready to see the amount of multiplicity that Ole Miss is going to present to them from a formation standpoint, from a personnel standpoint, shifts, motions, things of that nature. They're going to play really fast. You're going to have to diagnose quickly what you're seeing on that side of the ball. I also think, this is not a scenario where you're going to be able to limit Ole Miss to covering one guy, and that one guy is going to be your answer or solution. When you look at the breakdown from when they played Georgia State, they had 8 or 9 different guys that catch a pass and 4 or 5 guys that caught 3+ passes. So they're distributing the ball. They're spreading around. They're asking Austin Simmons to deliver the ball on time, on target in a progression-based offense. And so it's not going to be covering one guy, maybe like they did this last week with Vander Ross. You're going to have to cover a bunch of guys, and you're going to have to find a way to disrupt what they do offensively from that standpoint. So they've got a tall task ahead of them, but they've proven to be successful in the past playing against Lane Kiffin.
Zach Calzada is on record saying that he has to know when to be Clark Kent and when to be Superman. What does he need to be for this Kentucky offense this weekend?
I was really trying to figure out which one he was last week, if it was Clark Kent or Superman. I'm not sure. But it's got to be more efficient than 10 for 23 for 85 yards. Just not going to have a chance to win the game that way. He knows that. Bush knows that. Everybody's a part of that. He's proven to be a good player. He's played a long time in college football, and he's had success. So we know it's in there. We know he's capable of it. But you look back at what Brock Vandagriff did last year in that game. He threw for 243 yards in that game, and he was a key part of sustaining drives and putting Kentucky in a position to score the requisite touchdowns it took to win the game. Zach's going to have to be 3-4 times better than what he was last week to put us in a scenario to be victorious against Ole Miss. And that's a tall task. The good news is we talk about Calzada and the experience. He's had experiences probably playing games where he was not as productive as he'd like to be. So I suspect that if there's anyone that'll be able to bounce back, it'll be a guy like Calzada. And I'm hopeful that he can be more efficient and lead us into more completions and getting a rhythm a little bit earlier in this game.
The UK offensive line held up really well in that game against Toledo in pass pro. If you're the Ole Miss defense coordinator, how do you call a game against Zach Calzada after what you saw in week 1? Do you anticipate that he'll be a better player, or do you try to force him to be what he was last week?
Anytime you see a quarterback or a passing game go 10 for 23 for 85 yards against a MAC defense, maybe a good MAC defense, but a MAC defense, you're going to have some questions about their ability to complete passes with base concepts. I suspect that Ole Miss defense is going to look at the tape and they're going to demand that Calzada and these receivers complete passes against their coverage. And they're going to try to hold up with 3 or 4 guys up front and make him complete passes into base coverage stuff. Because it's proven, or at least over 1 week of sample size with this bunch, that it's an inefficient pass offense. And I think they're going to make them try to complete passes at a higher clip. What would be your approach if you were playing against a Kentucky team that had 11 yards of completions to wide receivers?
I probably wouldn't be aggressive in terms of trying to blitz. I just try to generate a little bit of movement, some shifts, and see if you can just get him to make some bad decisions. But I wouldn't bail him out, a guy that's a 7th-year player who's probably smart enough to be able to see blitz, know hot routes, and know where to insert the football because someone's not going to be in that passing lane. I wouldn't make it easy on it.
Can you consistently complete passes down the field in your offense? Is what I would make you do.
You remember the comment that I made when we were talking about I wanted to see when we got some of our first downs what our tempo looked like? I think we missed an opportunity after the bomb there that got called back to no huddle, get up to the line of scrimmage, and make Toledo burn the timeout there. Maybe they don't burn the timeout and we still won. Think that there has to be a lesson learned in that situation where when you have an explosive like that and it could be questionable because it's tight to the sideline or it was low to the ground, you got to get up to the line of scrimmage. When I look at the explosive that Willie Rodriguez had, I probably wonder if we went back and we looked at fall camp practices. After explosives in practice, how many people were actively ripping the football or trying to rip the football away from him? When I see a guy of his caliber put the football like that on the ground, for me, it always comes back to practice. Is he doing that in practice? Is he actively covering the ball up after the explosive? Why isn't he putting the second arm over the football? These are practice habits. And in this league, I noticed that some of the best defensive teams, they get their turnovers off of explosives. Watch the NFL game. A lot of those turnovers happen after explosives.
Yep, they do.
And we have to turn the tide, every pun intended, and we have to get involved in that. Our players have to get in a trail position, and we have to start trying to rip balls out, laying out to pull arms and get balls out after explosives because guys naturally get relaxed. Ball carriers get relaxed down the field after a 15, 20-yard game. And the ball, for whatever reason, ball security is an afterthought on the collegiate level. And that's why, in my opinion, why so many of them pop out in the college game.
Yeah, no, you're right. Again, we talked about the same way the best conditioning comes from playing football. It's the same way the best ball security and ball handling comes from is playing the game. There's a lot of psychology out there on how much time should you spend doing ball security drills. Look, ball security drills, it's never the guy that causes the fumble. It's the guy you don't see. And the best way to prepare for that, to your point, is through execution and practice.
Yeah, and creating turnovers, it has to be embedded in your DNA. You show me a team that's in the top 10 list of turnovers generated, I'll show you a team that has a defensive coordinator and assistant coaches that are emphasizing every single play getting the ball out, that are incentivizing getting the football out. What are your predictions this weekend? 3:30 kickoff against the Ole Miss Rebels. We're in a difficult position, having beat the Rebels last year, squandering their hopes for a playoff opportunity. What's your tale of the tape?
A tough game. And it's a stark difference in the game that we played in the first week going against Toledo. With that being said, I think Mark is going to get the coaches together. Bush is going to get Brad, and when they come up with their game plan for how they win and how they're successful this week, it's got to look very similar to what the recipe was last year. It's got to be a game where you reduce their amount of explosives and you possess the ball by running it and staying ahead of the chains, not turning the ball over, running it. Coach Smith used to always say, who's going to win the battle in the red zone? Who's going to kick field goals? Who's going to score touchdowns? It's going to be critical. Kentucky's got to be very efficient in the red zone. And I think with what Calzada provides in the quarterback run, coupled with these running backs, I think we've got the type of team that can be very productive in the red zone. So my prediction, I think we win at home. I think we win 21-17. I think it's going to be very similar game to last year. I think we're going to be disruptive in the pass game, and we're going to make Austin Simmons think, a guy that went 20 for 31 in his non-conference debut. We got SEC players on our side. I think we can be disruptive against them, and I think we can get it done at home. Jeremy, what you got? What do you think?
I think that Toledo had enough good players in skill positions to cause some issues for us to where we put some things on tape that we got to get back in and we got to fix this week. And that's a good thing. Young players made some mistakes, but guess what? Now they got an opportunity to grow in these trust exercises with Brad White, a guy who does not give up on players easily, an excellent motivator. You've called him a great man, and I think he's a really good defensive coordinator. I expect them to have a really good game plan that the players believe in. And I'm just going to say this. If there's another level to the enthusiasm that they played with against the Toledo Rockets, if there is another level, I can't wait. I will be in my seat for the playing of my old Kentucky home, and I'm going to be ready for this kickoff against Lane Kiffin and this offense that he brings in, because what an incredible opportunity that Mark Stoops has. Year 13, his back's against the wall. There's a lot of doubt people that have based off of what the box score showed against Toledo. I just hope that that wasn't a honeymoon phase, that these guys just weren't excited to line up and compete against guys that weren't their teammates. I don't think that's the case. I think Brad has a legitimate group of guys who showed an enthusiasm, that were high-fiving, that were encouraging each other. I watched the film. I analyzed those things, the small things that happened before the plays cut. And I am very enthusiastic about the details and the little things that I saw on film. Beat Lane 2 years in a row. What message does that send to the fan base?
Jeremy, we talk about it all the time. There's teams in this league that determine the type of season that Kentucky has. Ole Miss, one of those teams. Mississippi State, Missouri, South Carolina. Those are the types of teams that Kentucky wants to be able to compete with and beat in order for them to achieve their goals. Yeah, they want to beat Georgia, Alabama, LSU, and some of those top-tier teams. I think Florida's in that middle group now, but this is a huge opportunity for Kentucky. It's the opportunity to win a few more of those recruiting battles in a very comparable team. So I think that's the message that it sends. beat a team like Ole Miss in a year where the expectations are low, and it gives you the opportunity to stay relevant.